Thank you for watching. So this video is for people that are new to the hobby and want to get into wrenching with RCs and just getting creative. So here we took in the previous video, we took the front end off of a Traxxas Bandit and put it on a slash low center of gravity chassis. We installed that portion without the shocks or a front bumper. Now we're going to be doing the rear end, and one of the beautiful things about Traxxas really is how interchangeable the parts are. I mean, if you buy a slash and you buy a buggy Bandit, you can make a drag car, but then you can make a Bandit. So if you take the slash parts, put them on the Bandit, and then the Bandit parts, such as the arms and turnbuckles, on the slash, and you have a drag car. So you still end up with two cars. But here, we're not interested in creating a rustler. Sorry, I think I kept saying Bandit. So you take the slash parts, put it on the Bandit, you get a rustler. Take the rustler parts from the slash, you get a drag car. To a point. You still need a few other parts to complete the drag car. But now we're going to mount the rear in here. One of the key things is notice these little bumps here. Those key in right in there. So really screws, you're just going to need these 4 larger, the 2 smaller, and then the 2 here, because this is already mounted here. We're not going to do the body mount yet, although the slash rear is adjustable. You can't go up and down in the screws. We just have to see what body we're going to use first. So this build will be done at first without body mounts. So let's get started with this. Again, you're just going to line this. And this here is just going to snap in. Now, before I snap this in, one of the things to keep in mind is if you want to keep the stock setup, I mean, it's actually there, you can, and it'll work out. But if you don't mind not putting these screws here on the top, you could add, this would be the time to add some anti-squat. So the anti-squat, the only thing you would do is you would add some shims here to the front so that you change the angle on the arms so they're going up, and this will give you some anti-squat. And the purpose for anti-squat is as this car accelerates, it's going to want to push the arms down as this is turning, so it'll want to push the arms down, which will actually lift the rear of the vehicle. Or if it doesn't lift it because you don't have enough anti-squat, it'll squat less than it would if you have it perfectly flat or if you had it toward the front. So that's one of the tricks. So you may want to do it, you may not want to do it on your drag build. That is really up to you. For me, I'm not going to go ahead, I am not going to do it. And the reason why I'm not going to do it is because I'll take care of that problem a different way. And then I'll test, and then if I think I need it, I'll do it. So that's the other cool thing about this hobby. You can test everything, and it's not as expensive as if it were a real car. Here you're spending tens of dollars, real car, hundreds of dollars. If you spend hundreds of dollars here on a real car, you'd be spending thousands of dollars. Can you spend over $1,000 on an RC? Yeah, of course. On a drag car? Of course you could. But can you get something that's really nice, fun, and gives people a run for their money for a lot less? Of course you can, which is one of the nice things about Traxxas, because you can just get 2 vehicles and swap them out. You can get a standard slash for just under $200 pre-tax. You can get a Bandit VXL, because that's the transmission you want, the VXL transmission, for less than $300. Right. And then you would have most of the parts. You would just need wheels and tires, body, and then a wheelie bar, of course. Unless you're really, really good, you don't need a wheelie bar. You'd be like me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not that good. I'm just a fan of the sport. So these here were 2.5 millimeter. Now a 2 millimeter driver for these rear screws, which will also be the same for these top screws over here. So that being said, since I already flipped it, let me just go ahead and do the top screws. So we'll do the top screws. There's a lot of tuning that is involved, but before you start tuning, you really need to have the car built, the bulk of the car built, then you can start making changes. So one of the things is we may end up adding ballast to the vehicle, which is just a mass weight somewhere. Because this is a rear motor setup, there is a rear bias. These rear motors make them look really cool because they'll want to wheelie really easy, but that also makes them horrible for drag racing because they'll want to be going on the wheelie bar all the time. So you really want something to where the rear tires just come off to transfer the weight to the rear, but you don't want this to lift too much, then you have no steering, so if you lose grip with one wheel or the other, you're going to be going off the lane, off the track. So we may end up adding some ballast here or there, or maybe here behind the battery. So we have to see what batteries we're going to be running as well. But other than that, that's the rear part of the vehicle. So that was it for these four and those four. Now, I do recommend you add the last two to secure it, and then you'll truly be finished mounting this part here. Now, one of the reasons why we're using this transmission is, again, the idler gear is metal. So you save some money there. So really, just get a Bandit VXL model. If you get a brush model / or Bandit, more than likely it's going to be a plastic idler gear. And because you're going to be wanting to launch harder, you're probably going to strip that plastic gear. All right, so that is it for the rear. There is something I'm going to mention though for the shocks. I am not going to be using rear shocks on the rear, and the reason why is if you look at the rear, see how much travel it has. I do not want that much travel, so I'm actually going to be using front shocks in the rear. See that travel? I want to keep this about flat. I also don't want it to squat, so that I'll deal with springs and oil. But these are the front shocks. If I actually mount the front shocks, see here, and I want them as vertical as possible because it's just a drag car, that's almost a perfect length. I can have a stiffer spring without worrying about this here. So I can have a stiffer spring with an arm that's flatter. That way my shafts are straighter. I don't really want much of an angle here on my shafts if I can avoid it. Versus the rear, notice the difference if I were to apply the rear and I do that same vertical position. See, that is a huge difference. Huge difference. Now, in the past, I've actually opened up rear shocks and put a little piece of silicone tubing, such as fuel tubing, in there. The thing is, with the spring, eventually it will break that silicone tubing. Just, it cannot handle the stress. You can use maybe plastic washers or something else. I just don't want anything to be rubbing on the shaft, because then it destroys that coating and then it'll start leaking oil. I mean, it takes a long time, but still. So that's why I'm going to go front shocks in the rear. So front shocks in the rear, and notice the difference. Big difference, and that's how I want them. I want them nice and flat. So keep that in mind. Now in the front, the arms only go down that far. I want these to go as far as possible. Front shocks are going to be more than adequate on the inner side. So I'm going to be running front shocks all around. All right, that being said, again, we've installed the rear parts, and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, hit the bell.